Here we are, early October 2024. Hurricane Milton's coming across Florida, or soon will be. Feel bad for anybody in its path.
Yeah.
Terribleness. A lot of farmers dealing with Helene, which came through a few weeks ago now. And
Yeah,
that
about two
created
weeks
a
ago.
lot of issues in farm lives, families' lives. And I feel terrible for people that are having to deal with the aftermath of that. It's interesting that you pitched this topic today. You wanted to talk about the mental health or mental challenges of running a business. And I've been putting together this YouTube series talking about market farming basics. And I try and cover a lot of the X's and O's, if you will. This would be scheming up the game plan, but you ultimately need to have players that can go out there and execute in the heat of the moment when somebody's trying to tackle them, when there's pressure, when people are watching. And that's really what life is when you run a business, because whether it's a
Yeah.
hurricane or kids creating a hurricane inside your house, just running around, we're all dealing with something in our lives trying to put together the farm business. And one of the
Yeah.
things you mentioned in your notes that you've really felt, I don't want to say connected to, you've noticed this year that had a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. I would say previous to starting the farm, I would not have said that I was an anxious person. I had much of a battle with anxiety or depression or really any sort of mental health. Honestly, I was more of a just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, just keep going. Maybe not so much of just cheer yourself up, but very much not delving down the paths of focusing on mental health or thinking much about it or dealing with it. And since we started the farm, I would say probably around the time that the farm needed to start making money. So we'll say April. Yeah, really realizing that there was an underlying anxiety and kind of battle with that I have been consciously having to deal with on a daily basis. I'd say peaking around summertime, and now we're getting a handle on some of that now. And it's been very revealing to me about the way that my mind works and how my thinking goes, as well as trying to, or it's opened up kind of windows for me to see into areas where I'm lacking in taking care of myself, both on the physical side or maybe an emotional, spiritual side, or even just physically, whether it's like rest, things like that. And so it's been a really interesting journey on top of all of the challenges and learning opportunities of physically running the business, but then also having this like kind of war in my mind that I'm having to overcome and battle running parallel along with all of those things. So it's been a hell of a year.
Yeah, it's interesting for people who run businesses what the reality of running a business is. You're never quite prepared for it, and you find out how you react to it when you jump in.
Yeah.
I do a lot of swimming, and I like to swim longer distances. And once you get over even 20 minutes of continuous swimming, it's no longer really, I would say, a physical challenge. It becomes a mental challenge because you can't hear anything, basically staring down into nothingness, and you just got to push on. And it becomes all voices inside your head because there's no
Yeah.
radio if you're on a treadmill. And for me, it's taught me a lot about myself. And it's one thing that can be intensely hard some days of I just want to zone out and listen to something or have something on in the background, and you don't have that option.
Yeah.
And when you run a business, this is what you find out. You do the skill, the execution part, and then everything else in life beyond the business also starts throwing stuff at you, and you're having to just process it. It's never the good things, right? It's
Yeah.
always the bad that I've noticed that affect me. It's when the business slows down, when I do something stupid and make a bad move, because God knows I've made enough of those in my 7, 8 years running this. It's those times where I think I'm really much more tuned into the business. There's been definitely periods when I can look back and business is really good and you don't notice as much. Things fly under the radar. But for
Yeah.
you, you've had this Helene came through it, you got close to you, got a little bit of the side effect of that. You've had your whole having to support the family throughout
Hmm.
this, the decision of do I go full time on the farm? Do I leave this job and dealing with security? There's paying bills. I can only imagine what that's, and that's the one thing. Again, I talk about the series that I'm putting together. I can only prepare people to do so much. It's not until you get out there and start doing it that you figure out what this is actually like and who you are when and how you can handle it.
Yeah, and then on top of all those things that you mentioned, it's also just the challenges of day to day. Did it rain this week? Did it not rain? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Was the market slow? There's all of those variables as well. And really, it feels since February when we moved, and then 60 days or so after that, not even maybe 45 days after that, all of a sudden now the farm is like generating income and it's like a full-fledged business. And so in a pretty short amount of time, our lives completely turned upside down and things escalated a lot quicker. And so I think in hindsight, there would have been a lot more foundation work that I would have done in making sure that finances were a little bit more stable, plans were in place to be able to cause less of a anxiety and decision making in the moment, whether it's like a crop plan that I can be beholden to, or just simply planning a little further ahead for unknown variables, things like that. But at the end of the day, we just jumped in and we've been having to do that. And unfortunately, I'd say 99% of my issues mentally have all revolved around money. At the end of the day, if a crop fails or whatever, the stress about it is, oh man, that bed's not going to generate any money. Or if a market is slow, its sales are slow, and then you're trying to extrapolate out like, all right, so if sales are slow this week, where do we need to be the next 3 weeks? So when rent is due, or it's, an unexpected bill comes out and it's the same sort of thing. That, I mean, really at the end of the day, because right now things are cooking pretty well. We've added some restaurant sales, the market's stabilizing, and we've been able to cut some costs. And it's funny how that number in the bank account really is almost like is in direct relation to my anxiety level. And I hate to worship money, and I don't feel like I'm someone who really worships money and idolizes the number that's in my bank account or in someone else's, but it really does when you're so month to month, like kind of check to check, wondering if that restaurant doesn't pay their invoice now and they lollygag and wait a week, it's going to throw everything off. It's been a little disappointing to see how much that my anxiety is directly connected to the number in the business bank account.
I could see it being surprising when you step back and think about it. It's probably makes a lot of sense though,
Hmm.
because what else is there to worry about? And because I just think about the stuff I worry about around a business, and it's definitely my anxiety too has
Hmm.
been on times where it has been financially tight, slow, like things slow down, it gets quiet. And if your business is ever, I think where the anxiety gets ramped is if the business is ever in the zone of this month where the next few months could make or break us. When you're floating on that edge, maybe it's walking the line between the good side and the bad side. At any point, 1 month or a few months could just blow you off. The farther you get from that line to the good side, you just know you have buffer room. I might have used this metaphor in a previous one. It's you put a 2x4 on the ground and you walk across it and you're doing it all day jumping. You put it between two buildings 1,000 feet high, and most people aren't walking across without a harness.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference. And I don't know how you prepare people for that other than do some of the things that you talked about, maybe getting in a different financial position. And it's not just your personal finances when you start a business. It's also if you run a business. If you run a business very recklessly, it could start out amazing. And why do a lot of businesses go out of business? Probably because owners knowingly or unknowingly make financial missteps and they take it down. So it just financial prudence, while so boring and so
Mhm.
simple, it's such a stress reliever. I wonder if there's some study of tying that to aging, right? If you just
Mm.
live very cheaply and poorly and save money,
Yeah.
y- like by default, stress is lower. So you're just living longer. I think if you just run a business that way, yeah, it's not exciting. And some people like to live on that edge of destruction. Like they need it in their lives.
To feel alive.
Yeah. Look at some of these actors, right? They're so successful, or athletes or musicians that seemingly have it all: money, fame, yet through their own doing, drugs, scandals, they end up broke and it's all over. And it's
Hmm.
just prudence at the end of the day that would save us. So now, with the financial situation improving on your farm, it, do you feel that the floodwaters, unintended, there, are receding?
Yeah, I would say definitely. And I think, and we've touched on this numerous times, but I think more than anything, what is helping relieve it is not as much the number in the bank account as much as it is realizing that regardless of the number in the bank account, this ship is becoming seaworthy. Like it's weathered a couple of small storms and it's okay. As long as shit doesn't hit the fan, we can weather a couple of slow farmers market sales or a couple of weeks where restaurants don't place an order. We can, we've got enough in reserve. I trust what's coming down the pipe and knowing that's like, all right, yeah, it might be slow now, but next month when crop X comes online, that'll really hopefully turn things around. And so it's definitely it it's so it's not as much that the stress and the anxiety is not there, but it's that I'm seeing it through different eyes and seeing it through like, all right, it what seemed like a massive monster that could take me out is I'm now realizing that's all right, I dealt with that, I made it through it. It's really not as big of a deal as I initially thought, and we can actually make it through this. Because at the end of the day, at least for me, 99% of my anxiety is about stress of the future. It's about stress of the unknown. It's not necessarily the momentary, like where it's on top of mind, but I think about the people that are looking for loved ones or thinking about what's going to happen with their homes that are devastated. That's real stress. That's real anxiety. That's in this moment of my life has completely fallen apart and I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to make it till tomorrow or find my loved ones or whatever it may be. Um, but for me, it's more of like stressing about is the harvest going to look like at the end of the week, or what is it going to look like 2 months from now, or what is winter going to look like because we've never done this before. And so I think as I have those moments of stressing about the future, and then I inevitably make it to that point in the future and realize, okay, our plans were in place and we executed. And because we had a plan and we followed it, we made it to this point and it worked out. And then it's like, all right, so now we can just remember to trust the plan. And even though there may be some uncertainties and some moments where it may creep up and try and cause some stress, we just can sit back and trust the plan and trust the process and know that we'll make it through it.
Yeah. Old Navy dentist I had said I hated getting crowns. And unfortunately, I have too many, thanks to my original dentist. Would say you're really, what causes fear is you don't know what's going to happen, the unknown,
Yeah.
or you don't trust the process of what's put in front of you. There's a couple other things you listed off that probably came out of the Navy, but it is that fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
So having encountered something, you've built confidence if you conquer it. I've done that before. Like you said, not as big of a deal as I thought. Suddenly, we always picture it. It's much bigger. The shadow in the corner of our room as a kid was some alien coming to get us, or the
Yeah.
werewolf. And it wasn't like the movie Little Monsters. There wasn't actually a monster there or an alligator under my bed. But it was, we do it. We build the skills now to deal with it, and we survive that much longer. So I think for me, I totally agree. It's you weather storms and you say, okay, I have weathered storms. You've also survived that much longer. So it becomes, when you start a business, I think there's some thought of, I don't know, at least I don't think this, maybe you do. When you're alive, I don't think about, I might die tomorrow. I'm not at that
Yeah.
point in my life. I just live my life and just think, hey, it's all good. When you start a business early on in your business, you're probably thinking about your business's life, thinking, are we going to make it? Or is this thing going to last? Is it a fluke? Is this a one-off? Did we just
Yeah.
strike gold? You don't know because you're not in control. So at the beginning, it's very much, how much does it keep going? You're walking blindly into this, down this dark hallway. And at some point you think the floor is not there and there's a vast Indiana Jones chasm you're going to fall into.
Hmm.
And eventually you're like, all right, it's not, the floor just goes forever. You stop thinking about when this could fail and you just look and say, we're moving forward. So you also, I think, conquer that fear. Are you past that phase yet where you don't feel the, I don't want to say day to day, the week to week, month to month risk of the business? Obviously, you get a hurricane that came through Helene and it devastates some communities. That changes things. That's a black swan event. But barring a black
Yeah.
swan, do you feel like you are walking the life path now, or you still feel like I'm shaky?
No, I think we're definitely still in the shaky phase because we're still in that point where everything we're doing is new. I've never grown on a scale of actually like selling and doing markets and whatever on October 8th before. Like it's all new. And tomorrow will be the first time I've ever done it on October 9th, and then so on and so forth. And it's all very strange and very new and very much unknown. And so there is a strong sense still where it's like, all right, I'd say maybe we're beyond week to week, and now we've moved month to month. And I think we talked about this in a previous episode of no longer looking at the money week to week, but actually looking at kind of the overall sales trend of the month. But there's still a constant feeling of, is this almost like questioning them, or very much thinking of the mortality of the business? Is this going to last? Am I going to do this for 30 years? Am I going to do this for 3 years? I don't know. Am I going to make it through the end of the year? Is something catastrophic going to happen? Whatever. And I think it's those moments where you start thinking about that, where the anxiety can become extremely crippling, because it goes beyond just, I'm thinking about the future, I'm being wise and I'm being proactive. And then it goes into, I'm doom spiraling into, oh my God, is the business going to survive next month? What happens if I break my back? Or every time you pull out of the driveway, it's like, am I going to get in a car accident and then I can't run the farm? And then next thing you know, and then you do start spiraling into those, like thinking of your own mortality and thinking about like, what happens if my kids don't have a dad, and how does that all work out? And for me, that's been the biggest problem, is it would be like these small, insignificant stresses of, am I going to have enough hackeri turnips this week, can totally devolve into an absolute like mental breakdown, where I'm like laying in bed at 3 a.m. and just going, oh my God. And you're thinking of your own mortality and thinking about the future of everything, and thinking about, yeah, a hurricane could come through and blow it all away and wipe it out tomorrow. And so for me, that's really where the challenge comes in, is it's, yes, I'm able to weather those small storms, but at the end of the day, there's still this unsettling, this imbalance within my mind and within my body that would cause such a small stressor to just flip a switch and just turn into an absolute doom spiral that would then, in some cases, cause me to make decisions or make choices out of this very rash, almost manic position of I'm just trying to put out a fire that I have totally manifested in my own mind. And thankfully, usually I could bounce an idea off of my wife or off of Nicholas or whoever, and they can talk me off that cliff. But even in those moments where you're weathering those storms, it's like without the proper infrastructure and without the proper mental health protocols, those small little anxieties can really send you into a whirlwind.
Do you think that's because you are living, the business is operating so close to the edge of destruction? If you're month to month, you can't really get much closer.
Yeah, absolutely. Every month we're more or less thinking like, yeah, will we pay bills? I knew we would pay all of our bills this month. There was no question about that. But it's to the point of, are we going to have to dip into the money that we're setting aside for operating expenses for next year? But it's still very much, yeah, one crazy catastrophe, and not even a crazy catastrophe. Like I've got a tractor with a blown hydraulic cylinder that's 500 something dollars, and I don't have a solid answer on if the landlord's paying for it or if I'm paying for it. And so if I have to pay for it, that's a huge hit to the budget that is going to really change the trajectory of the next couple of months. And yeah, just still being month to month, still being in survival mode, definitely I think creates this like low level sense of you always keep your head on a swivel, metaphorically speaking, like waiting for the next catastrophe to hit. And it's almost easier to just anticipate something that hasn't happened yet and stay on your toes for if it does, as opposed to just sitting back and resting and waiting for kind of life to come as it does. And yeah, I think a lot of that just boils down to if finances were secure and I had a better idea of what next week will hold, then it would probably alleviate a lot of the stress. But in the moment, it doesn't feel like another $100 in the bank account is going to make much of a difference. It really does feel like this insurmountable thing that is in front of you.
Yeah. No, I asked that too to give you credit because I don't think anybody can weather that well. I don't know that it's just mental techniques or ninja-ing your way inside out of that, because I just think it's really hard. Look at you put anybody under enough stress for long enough, they eventually lose their mind. Look at the people in trench warfare in World War One. Obviously, that was awful. But
Yeah.
those people are excited, volunteering, signing up, cheering to go to war, and end
Hmm.
up in France and mud pits with millions of flies and dead bodies and rats and bombs going off and poison gas. And eventually some of them lose their minds.
Hmm.
And I think business, entrepreneurship, while you're not being bombed and you're not physically going to die, it can mentally destroy you. And it can for sure mentally destroy relationships if
Yeah.
you are not prepared for it. I know somebody who started a business last year and their business is doing well, but they are having a tough time navigating the business waters, not the execution, the just ever demanding nature. It's the shells coming in on the Western Front. They're just coming in all the time. Something breaks, something showed up wrong, and you don't plan for any of it. And it comes, and you start getting depleted after a while. You're on this heightened alert from constantly
Yeah.
reacting to things. And then more stuff just keeps coming in, and there's not much enthusiasm buffer or whatever that chemical is to absorb some of this stuff and be like, oh, just bounce right off me. It didn't
Yeah.
hurt. Eventually it's, oh, I'm getting hit. I'm getting hit. I can't take it. I can't take it, but I must survive and keep going. And I think it's incredibly hard. I mean, I struggle with it today. And I think I'm very mentally strong and I don't know a way out of it other than trying to build fences. It'd be like if you lived through the Great Depression,
Hmm.
you damn sure are probably never gambling or living extravagantly ever again after that because you don't want
Yeah.
to even get anywhere near that eating shoe leather and banana peels. And I think I've been through some rough times. I lived through 2008 as a stockbroker, and people lost a ton of money in one day when the market went down, and people called crying and yelling at you. And I lost a lot of money, and I was like, never again do I want to be
Mm-hmm.
in that position. It was awful. So from that side of my life, I've never even came close. I just got mentally scarred by it, or prudent, however you want to view it. But it
Yeah.
changed the way I live. And I've had things in my business that are very similar, where I did rookie mistakes and dumb things, and I learned from it. I survived, but I won't dabble in those areas ever again because it sucks. It hurts. It takes time away from my family. I feel like it takes time off my life. I've probably gotten gray hair, even though you can't see it from it. It's just tough. And I commend you for doing it. And I sure there's things we can do to try and alleviate the stress, but till you go through it, maybe it's just mitigating it and making sure you're not taking it out on somebody else, making sure you can still find ways to switch off, making sure you're not turning to substances that so many people turn to try and hide from it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge it, it's there, but you're not going to avoid it. And you react how you react, and you learn to react differently based on how you react the first time.
Yeah. And you brought up something interesting talking about you lose that thing that just says, it doesn't bother me anymore. I can just take it on and let's fight, let's go. And I really do think, like, now obviously I'm not a doctor, but like on a physiological level, like for a while, you just live off of the adrenaline rush. Like you live off of that surge of adrenaline that courses through your body when it's go time. And whether it's like a car in front of you cuts you off and you like have to slam on your brakes, and you're like, ooh, I almost avoided a crash. And then you're like, I need to go run a couple miles just to run this adrenaline out of my body. But you can get to a point where it's almost like that button gets smashed every night as you're putting the kids to bed, thinking about, oh man, am I going to have anything this week? Or man, I don't know if we're going to be able to pay rent this month. And it's when all those things are like, it's like every time you have one of those thoughts, it's just like smashing that adrenaline button and like coursing it through your body. And then eventually you just get to this point, like in a very physiological way, where you just become like fatigued, have adrenaline fatigue, like where you just can't, like you either can't take it anymore, you're like, I'm just worn out, or like where your body physically is not able to put yourself in that fight or flight anymore. And a lot of times I feel like that is it's like reaching that point of I can't smash the button anymore to get me through it. And I feel like that's when you start creeping into things like burnout, into questioning if you want to just end the business, be done with it, or move toward, like you said, substances, whether they're legal or illegal, depending on which state you live in, just to take the edge off, just to clear your mind or whatever, all in search of just alleviating this like storm that is in that you can no longer ignore, or the pain that you can no, or the fear that you can no longer overcompensate with by getting like a rush of adrenaline or a shot of motivation, and moving forward. And I think, yeah, you reach that point, and then once you come to that crossroad, then you make a decision on, are we going to call it quits, or are we going to try and implement things, put things in place on a practical level, on a personal health level, on a relational level, to either keep us from ever going down this road again, doing things like not gambling in the stock market anymore, not throwing things away like our grandparents did after surviving the depression, or it's saying like, all right, so there are certain things that we're never going to be able to avoid. So let's have a plan in place. Let's have our exit strategy, our go bag, our fallback plan in place, so that if this happens again, even on a small level, we can fall back to a crop plan, and we don't have to stress and worry about what am I going to do next week, because you just trust the process.
You're getting bombarded constantly. The best, one of the shields you can start to build over you is a financial one. Because if I know I can live to fight another day, then that's less for me to worry about tonight. I start stressing when I worry that the days are dwindling down. It's the zombies are all coming and you got an ammo can there and you look down and there's thousands and you have three shells left in there. That's when you start leaking out of all orifices uncontrollably. Now, if you're sitting in a magazine room and you got 10
Yeah.
million shells and you're ready to go, bring them on. Let's take them out. That is one way you build the buffer. So it's never even a worry, I guess is the way. Let's take things that we could have to worry about and do our best to put them in the category of never have to worry about them or worry about them as little as possible. So if we worry that we might not be able to pay our bills, let's build up enough of a savings so we have a long runway. So we're never worrying about that. Or we build the business up to such a way. We worry that the business might go bankrupt. Let's build savings in the business. Let's not take on too much debt in the business. If we make large financial decisions in the business, let's think about how that could play out. You see this in sports all the time. Look at the Cleveland Browns, this stupid Deshaun Watson contract. They guarantee this guy all this money. He stinks. And they're stuck with this guy for
Yeah.
the next 2 or 3 years. And it's going to set their franchise back 10 years. And I think that's a metaphor for business. You make some dumb move, you start a farm and I don't know, buy a brand new Chevy truck for 80 grand that you think you need to haul stuff around. Sometimes you can't recover from that for a long time. You have to take that like dead cap hit that they take, and I'm going to sell it for a loss and we're going to live super prudently for a few years to day our way out. And you're treading water in place just to recover from that mistake and get back. So that's one buffer I think you can really put out there in life of let's envision what can go wrong and what can we do to insulate ourselves. The crop planting thing, if we know from farmers, okay, that's something that's always going to be coming at us. What am I going to plant next? What's coming? I'm going to be selling stuff. If you can at least lay it out, it gives you that scripted thought of where stuff could go. And I could look at the plan and say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. Does it make sense? Now I'm just saying, does
Mhm.
it make sense versus I don't have a plan and I don't know, I'll just plant that.
Yeah.
And you make the wrong choice and that sets you back on a farm. That could be if it's radishes and you shouldn't have grown them, but you grew them to harvest, that's 30 days. If you planted salad mix and you should have done something else, that's 60 days. 60 days in a 5-month selling season, that might as well be a year or two in the NFL. That's a huge amount of your sales that you've suddenly lost. So
Yeah.
what can go wrong? And then that starts to push back the demons so you have a little more room to breathe. And so you're not hitting that button every night. The button's just getting hit less frequently because nothing's ever getting close enough. You're in, I don't know, who is that guy I'm walking, a Negan maybe, who had like his own little fortress, right? He's just living in there, living his best life. And he doesn't worry about the world out there. He's got henchmen and stuff dealing with all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like with a lot of things, like when you're able to dial back and quote unquote not hit the button, not have those like adrenaline spikes, they become more, you gain your, or you lose your tolerance again. And so it becomes more potent. I think about the moments now where it's like when I do have a stressful moment that hits and it's okay. We can really like get freaked out and get motivated to figure it out and then we can be done, as opposed to before it's like, all right, this is the 15th fire to put out this week and you're just like whatever. And you build up a tolerance and a fatigue of just, and then you just go meh, and then suddenly something that may have been a small fire that you could put out and pivot from and move forward suddenly just becomes like another, it's almost like you can develop this like apathy in your mistakes. And then next thing you know, you're just like, screw it, whatever. Yeah, I probably should have weeded that bed of carrots, but it's like, whatever, it's fine. And then next thing you know, you're sitting there, oh my God, I'm not going to have any carrots because they didn't grow really well, or germ was bad and you can't find them in the weeds. And then so it's like that apathy just breeds more mistakes and more opportunities to have stress and anxiety. And then it's just compounding. So by having moments where you can choose to pivot and say, no, like we're not going to allow this to take us down. We're going to double down. We're going to focus. It can give you that resiliency to stay in a sense of awareness. Like I can imagine, back to your World War I metaphor, I have to imagine it's at some point that the barrage of bullets and things starts to just become like your everyday, where, if you, or another real life example, on multiple occasions in our life, including the last house we lived in, we lived right next to the train tracks. And eventually, the first week that you live there, you wake up in the middle of the night when the train goes by and you're like, oh my God, it's so loud. Like, how do people do this? And then 3 years in, you're sitting there having a conversation with a buddy over a beer on your front porch, and they're like sitting there with their eyes bugging out of their head, and you don't even miss a beat. You just keep talking right through it. You don't even hear it anymore. And in some ways, I feel like you reach a point where you've put out so many fires and you've neglected to build a sense of resiliency in your business, that the things that would really shake up other people just be like, oh yeah, whatever. And not in a good way, not of you just blow off a tiny little fire and say that's insignificant, but it becomes like something that should be alarming to you is just, whatever. Business sucks. Blame it on the market, blame it on the customer base, and you just go on. And then next thing, you get 3 years into that, and you're just, the business is tanking, and then you're just in this like apathetic depression of whatever, and you just say, screw it.
That's an interesting managing newsletter, interesting podcast episode of don't care decisions in a business versus it doesn't matter. Because I think they're often the same decision being made from different perspectives. You hit the nail on the head. When you're stressed, a lot of little things are like, who cares? Let it go.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about it. Where if you're in a position of strength and the business is working good, those things you're going to decide that's not the highest priority right now. And I think that
Yeah.
phrasing is totally different. The mindset's totally different. It's not important now versus whatever, don't care. Totally different. And you find yourself in those positions, and that's not a good position to be in, because there you're, when do you start caring again? Why are you even running the business again? Are you just waiting on fate to change things? Where does it go? Have you just given up? And
Yeah.
that's a scary place to be in. I think about some of the hardest times and wish I could have some of those days back, because at the end of the day, I'm going back to you like hitting the button night after night, and you're just like thinking about stuff that's gone wrong, or you spiral. And there's so many nights in the past where I'd be done, but I didn't want to engage with anybody. I could be present and hanging out, but I just want to watch TV, eat Ben and Jerry's, and zone out for the most part. I didn't want to think about anything because the bad thoughts were so consuming everything that was going on. Just the idea of wanting to talk about something positive with my kids or my
Yeah.
wife it was as though my brain couldn't even believe that was real.
Yeah.
There's so much negative that I'm not going to try and pretend to be happy now, because none of this is good. And there could have been times in there too where there probably would have been a welcome release to just somehow convince myself, okay, it might be going not optimally or going bad, going shitty, however I want to say it. That's fine. But if you continue to mope, that's not going to turn it around. It's not going to make your day any better. You're just going to have a shitty night too. So now you've let this thing turn your whole life shitty. And versus you just acknowledge like it was bad, fine, let's compartmentalize that. Let's at least acknowledge the positive things in our life,
Yeah.
because they're not bad. They're good. Like, I like those people. I want them in my life. But I've definitely, probably looking at your list of things you talked about, and there was probably burnout in there, and probably some form of depression. I would definitely on the depression scale for me, where it took over. The business started consuming me, making me low self-esteem, burned out, depressed. And that was how I was starting to define myself. And even though there
Mm-hmm.
was amazing things happening in other parts of my life, I just couldn't see it. Or I didn't,
Yeah.
frankly, I probably didn't want to either. It was like, I have this, and part of it's tied to something you alluded to. When you're a husband, a man, you have kids, you do feel this whatever pressure to just support people, and
Mm-hmm.
you want to do good. And you feel if you're failing, like now you're failing as your role, not just as a husband or a human and who you are. It's what's the point of me even being here if like my whole job is to do this part of the system of raising new people. And it's just can be a dark place. And I wish I had great advice of how to get out of it, other than I think a lot of it is one business that the conference when I was doing that really dragged me down. I shut that down, and that was
Mm-hmm.
immediate relief. So it's like
Yeah.
that was gone. And the times when I've had slower periods growing this company, the business picked up. So it
Yeah.
wasn't me. Well, it
Yeah. And
was me, I guess, making some choices, but yeah, that was that.
yeah, I think, you know, like anxiety and stress can, and I don't know if it's as a defense mechanism or if it's just as a sheer, like you're just done, like your mind can't handle it anymore. It's like I've found myself this summer, many evenings, like I would like cycle back and forth where during the day it was just like high stress, high cortisol, just like through the roof. Just like I will work sun up to sundown, even if I'm not productive, because if I'm at least working, I at least feel like I have some semblance of control. And then would reach a point where it's like, all right, the sun's down, I can't work anymore. And then you come home and then you just like pendulum swing into this like place of just complete apathy where you're just like, whatever. And then from that point of apathy, you make apathetic decisions. You do things to try and comfort yourself, take a little something to take the edge off. And then next thing you know, you're like, oh, look, now I'm even more paranoid and anxiety prone than I was previous. And then you don't sleep very well. And then you wake up and then you slept in 30 extra minutes. So then you feel like it's 30 extra minutes you missed that day and then shoot back up. And then you get to, and then so it became this like sine wave of like peak anxiety and then just like bottom trough apathy and depression, and then you would just cycle back and forth. And it's if we're trying to be here with a very minimal, like little moments where you might feel a little bit down, but you can just pick yourself back up and keep going, and little moments of stress. It was like the higher you would shoot up into anxiety, the further the drop would go, and then back and forth. And then the more you do it, the more you make decisions out of that, especially on the health side. I feel like for me, it would be in those apathetic moments where it would like, yeah, I would stay up and I would like my wife is an amazing baker and I wasn't like pounding Ben and Jerry's mostly because we couldn't afford it. But I would just eat a couple extra slices of like fresh sourdough and then feel like crap in the morning because I ate at 11 o'clock at night and just pure carbs. Or I would wake up tired. And so I would pound coffee and drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day. Also because it helped quiet the ADHD brain and then you're literally like in a adrenaline fatigue, like chemical induced fatigue, and then you like sleep like shit, and then you're tired, and you wake up, and then so you do it again, and so it was just like every one of these like kind of anxiety depression cycles would just lead to more and more bad decisions that eventually, and it's at some point you slowly but surely with different things, I would find moments where I would say enough is enough, we're going to stop the caffeine. We're going to go down to 1 cup a day. Or it would be like, enough is enough. We're going to start exercising again in the morning. Or enough is enough. We're going to just be as absolutely frugal as possible. I don't think we can be more frugal than we are. And it's just slowly but surely I had these moments where you just would say, enough is enough about this instead of overthink. I think my problem and a lot of people's problem is you want to say enough is enough and you want to adopt every protocol and you want to do everything and you want to fix everything all at once. Like you want to lose weight, go through a body recomposition, start working on lifting more, eating better protein. And I'm also going to practice mindfulness, but I'm also going to start reading books again. And then I'm also going to sign up for this course. And I'm also going to dedicate this much of my finances to giving to charity. And I'm also going to make sure that I'm prioritizing friendships and relationship. And you try to do everything all at once. And for me, it felt like the ticket out of that high low cycle was just step by step saying enough is enough. I will fix this today and walk that out, or I will change this today. And slowly but surely, as you start tacking on those things, even if you don't see much change at first, like incrementally, things would begin to shift and begin to change to where now I'm sleeping better. Now I'm not like geeked out on caffeine all day long from just consuming coffee, and or I'm in a better financial position because I'm not making dumb stress-based decisions for the business, and I'm able to set some money aside, or I'm able to just be a happier person at the farmer's market because I'm not counting the cash box 15 times in that 4 hours, trying to track the literally like minute by minute, hour by hour sales. And so then I can be more relaxed and I can be happier, and I feel like it pays off to the customers. And then because I imagine that I was very much projecting my stress at the market. I probably wasn't very happy, so on and so forth. And then I would even get desperate and start making like offhand comments about, yeah, this market doesn't pick up. I don't know if I'll be able to do this much longer. Even if I didn't mean, it's just like, I just felt like I needed to get it out because it was just in me. And it's like, those people are like, I don't want to buy from this mopey farmer who's just depressed all the time. But I feel like I'm ranting now. But
No, it's dead on. The remove one thing at a time, I think, is it. You're not. That's the nice thing. You can't. Well, the hard thing to realize is you can't turn your life around and get it to where you want to be instantly. But conversely, you can stop bad stuff instantly.
mhm.
Things that are pulling you down, you can often get out of that right away. Now, that might require some ramp up, some addicted to some crazy drug or something that's going to take some down. But I can choose to stop drinking massive amounts of caffeine today, and that'll make a positive impact on my life that'll play out over the next few months and then way
Yeah.
into the future. So the change happens over the long term, although we want it to happen all at once, but we can stop the negative downside. I know I probably haven't drank, I might have a drink once in a while now, but I don't drink for the most part. And it's been 8 years, something like that. And it was probably the best move I ever made. I'm sure I
Yeah.
would have ended up as an alcoholic along the way, like just my personality and going through tough times and stuff like that. It was an easy vice. So I think knowing yourself is really key. If you're the traits that make entrepreneurs that play into this whole ADHD, is it ADHD? Is it not ADHD? Whatever entrepreneurs have, they are wired differently than regular people.
Yeah.
Many of them. Let's not label everybody, but many of them are. And those same traits of I'm going to work sun up to sundown. I'm going to pour myself into anything. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that with drinking too and all the other stuff, right? It
Kind of
just
work hard,
extends
play
to the
hard.
bad things.
hmm
And that's why it can be dangerous. That maybe that's the downfall of a lot of these celebrities. So off that, it's what's made them successful contributes to their eventual demise, taking some risks to go out and leave a job to audition for a role, and that leaves them on the edge, and they dedicate their career to doing this. Then I dedicate it to heroin, and I'm Chris Farley, although somebody gave that to him allegedly. So yeah, it's hard. I think life is a sine curve. Life is a sine curve. It's a series of sine curves within it. That's a fractal.
Just trying to, yeah, you're just trying to like lower the amplitude. It's
But you don't want to be a flat line. Then
no.
you never get the highs.
So then you're
And we
dead.
all want to live on the upswing of the sine curve.
Yeah.
But look at your whole life. It's just there's always these little downswings that come along. The older I get, the more I notice it throughout the year. I started to notice I get these seasonal dips just when I'm have more energy, when I'm mentally happier. I can't tie it to life. It's probably tied to the moon or some sort of crap that we haven't figured out yet.
because Mercury's in retrograde. That's why, Diego.
Exactly. It's like if I only would know that, then I would be able to face Jupiter when the sun comes up,
Yeah.
stare at it, and it would reset my internal guidance system. But I don't know that. But I just
Hmm.
know that for me, I've started to learn, hey, there's times a year where I feel less energy. I want to work less. I find myself wanting to go to bed earlier or sleep in a little later. And instead
Hmm.
of me trying to impose myself or ignore that reality, I've started to go with it and adjust my schedule. I know there's times when I just feel a little more down. I'll say less happy because I don't want to be like I'm feeling depressed or sad. I'm just it's taking more to get me happy. And I think there's just some seasonal thing with that. So I know and it's usually around this time of year. And it's just if bad things happen in the business or in life, I'm aware of I'm already a little bit down. Let's just play this off. It's not that big of a
Hmm.
thing. And I'm aware of these things now. And I wasn't when I was younger. And so when you get into business, if you've never ran one, that's the other hard thing. You've done the entrepreneurial thing, right? Before you got into this. You're not somebody who came out of a cubicle
Yeah.
now trying to figure this out. And those are the people that I am really worried for because they're used to somebody telling them when to show up, what to do for the most part. There's probably a lot of room in there, but now you make every decision and you
Yeah.
have to do all that and all of the pressure's on you. And that's, so we've talked about this whole episode, extremely hard.
Yeah. And for better or for worse, for most of my adult life, I've thrived and lived from a place of like stress and anxiety and in the unknown. And it's just, yeah, and it's, is this just my life? Is this just the cards that life has dealt me? Or is this self-induced? Am I somehow creating and manifesting opportunities to like go through hard things because it's just what like reminds, it makes me feel alive? Because there's an element, the way my brain works, where it's, I tend to function better. My mind quiets down. I can be a much better decision maker when everything is on the line. If everything's good and everything's cushy and everything's quiet, it's just, oh my God, I don't know what am I doing right now? Like days off are so tough because
I'm the
it's
same
like,
way. Does that mean
yeah,
we're somehow broke?
it's just, I don't know. I wonder sometimes. But then put me in I almost, I've said this a million times. Like, maybe I missed my calling at being an EMT because I had last year, almost exactly a year from now, or a year ago from now, maybe in November, I was like the first one on the scene of a really horrible accident. Ran up to a car. I thought the gentleman was dead. It's a whole story. Basically, he took the rear end of an 18 wheeler to the face, and I was barefoot because I was coming home from the farm. I was barefoot. It was pouring down rain. It was November, and in that moment, it was like this is everything that I've been preparing for. And I'm walking across broken glass with bare feet, shivering in the cold. I immediately knew how to put his head, stabilize his neck, do as what the EMTs called like life-saving procedures. I'm sitting there, I'm yelling at him, stay with me, man, stay with me, man. And I'm like talking to the driver of the 18 wheeler who's freaking out on the phone with 911. Then I'm like talking with police and they're saying, like, don't move, keep doing what you're doing until the paramedics get here and all this sort of stuff. And it was like my mind was never quieter. I was never more at a place of like peace and just like everything in life makes sense right now. In the most chaotic, and then of course, like the come down afterward was just like, oh my God. And it was like weeks of dealing with the trauma of that. And I thought he died and then found out he didn't die and the whole thing. But it was, and so it's just this thing of I thrive in these moments of absolute chaos. And it's like when I just feel like I do my best work. And so in some ways I have to like step back and go, how much of these fires are subconsciously, am I subconsciously like creating opportunities? Because it's just easier to live in the moment that maybe I'm neglecting to prepare, I'm neglecting to plan for the future because subconsciously or deep down, I just know my better work's going to happen when I just do it in the moment, anyways. And then it's, oh, I'm so stressed and life's so crazy. And it's, if you would just do your crop plan and do 100 push ups in the morning and eat some more protein, and drink less coffee, your life would be 1,000 times better. But
Maybe
because
not.
we, yeah, maybe not. I don't know, but yeah, it having an entrepreneurial ADHD brain it's a hell of a ride.
You have, there's a lot there. So I think in some ways I'm wired the same. I don't have that same EMT story, but I do notice that if something happens around the house, one of our kids gets injured, I can be more calm than my
Hmm.
wife. And I do that same thing. Everything slows down. It's like, all right, let's go through the motions. Let's get this taken care of and go. And I think a really good example of this is somehow YouTube fed me this video of a dog trapped in this SUV that was on fire, and a cop pulls up, and there's the owner outside the car freaking out. Like, it's a big dude, not small. It's not some little old guy. You think he could get himself in the car if he needed to, but he's just screaming, high pitched scream. So you don't think it's coming from this man, a big dude. Like, there's a dog in the car. There's a dog in the car. And the cop just walks up, runs up to the car. Where? And then just bam, first window. Looks, where is he? Where is he? Goes back to the second window. Is he in here? Hits the back window. Goes to pull it out. The owner is calling the dog from in the car. The owner goes to pull the dog out. He's got the dog, but he's so freaked out, he can't even lift the dog. And it's not some 200-pound Great Dane or something.
Yeah.
He just is so mentally out of it. He can't do it. And he finally just turns and he's freaking out. And the cop just reaches in and gets some, probably adrenaline's flowing, but he's been in that situation before. It shows this exact scenario. And I think if you've lived in business, this is you're the cop versus the first time you're the guy. But I think all of us are somewhere on this spectrum of John Belushi or Jim, I don't know. John Belushi, he's the one that died.
Yeah.
5. He's a 10 out of 10. I'm going to live life at the max. We'll drink as much Jack as we can with as much Coke as we can, and we'll try and get right to the gram limit and ounce limit before our heart stops and eventually you die. That's riding on the edge of destruction, and they love it. And the other end is somebody who, I don't know, watches The Bachelor at home and doesn't go out or do anything. Sorry,
Yeah.
Bachelor fans. And I think I'm definitely, if you said right down the middle, for as
Yeah.
conservative as I do like to be after living through some life experiences, I probably err closer to Belushi than Bachelorette person. And it sounds like you do too, where
Yeah.
we are prone to want to be, it's too calm in our life. And I don't think I ever make this decision, but you could probably analyze my life if I took it down and say, here, you seem to be doing really nice and everything seemed to be going swimmingly. And then you decided to do this. And suddenly the risk level in your life or the stress in your life went up. You didn't appear to have any reason to do that. Why did you make that decision? And I think there probably is something in me that's go, let's do something. And that energy can be harnessed for positive stuff. It's why I do these podcasts and crazy stuff like this, because I just can pour myself into it.
Mhm.
But if this is alcohol, it's a very negative thing. And I do find myself, knowing myself too, if I sit around too much, if I'm not doing anything, it feels, hey, you're not doing anything. Do
Yeah.
something. And luckily, it's not destructive behavior of the chemical sense or some sort of bad addiction, but maybe there is like this entrepreneurial addiction, or just I'll record another podcast or I'll schedule something else into my schedule. So it's more schedule abuse for me of things. And if you get in this game of entrepreneurship, this is part of it. It's the stuff that makes it work, and the stuff that helps keep you calm under pressure is also the same stuff that doesn't make it work and puts the pressure on you in the first place in some scenarios.
Yeah. I want to touch on something we talked about earlier, and I'm curious kind of your perspective on this. But I had mentioned that I would feel this like insatiable need to continue to work, like sun up to sundown, every possible hour. just to feel like I was in control. And so how much of that do you think is like for you personally is I can't sit still just because I'm just not wired that way and I'm a little maybe a little more hyperactive. I want to work. I have a really busy brain, and so like by doing something physical or just working, I just don't do well with downtime. Or how like for me, I realized so much of it was not from this place of I just enjoy what I do so much, but it was like if this ship, it almost felt like as long as I was still working, I was keeping the ship from sinking in some semblance. And so it wasn't it would people like, man, you work so hard, like you're so dedicated. And it's man, I wish it was so noble, but it's like this compulsion of I have to do it to keep it from bursting into flames. And it's if I can just stay out there for another hour for this or that, whatever, it maybe I can keep the business afloat, even if what I'm doing is completely not high value and it's totally unproductive. Have you had moments like that?
I don't know if it directly like that, where I feel me working more is going to move the needle. I definitely feel there's times in life where I have to convince myself that I'm in control, not life,
Yeah.
where let's say something bad happens related to the business that day. I'll decide, okay, I'm going to work out like a maniac because I'm going to prove to myself that I chose to do something really hard. I did it and I did it and I conquered that. And that wasn't like life throwing me at a problem. I put the problem in front of me and I just said, screw that. I'm taking it out. So I do
Yeah.
that. I I do have a hard time sitting still. I'm not a huge, as much as I'd love to watch things on TV, it is hard for me to sit there. I try and watch movies and stuff, and I don't think I have the dopamine problems that anybody from the age of, let's say, 8 to 20 has due to Snapchat and all this other crap that they've been looking at for 10 years.
It's a lot older than 20. I think there's a lot of people in their 30s that are just as addicted
I don't have
to
that, but
TikTok.
yeah, I don't want to watch this movie. I'd rather write something. So I'm nerdy that way. Or I'll
Hmm.
go, like I said, work out, or I'll edit a video or something like that. But I do find myself feeling like I should do more. I could do more. Like I definitely choose more over nothing. But
Yeah.
at the same point, I am cognizant of times where I will be, no, I know my limit. I'll say to myself, I know I'm on the edge. I have to just watch garbage or just force myself to sit down, and whatever I do in that time, whatever I find myself guilty watching, I'm just accepting that I'm going to sit there and watch it. And because I need the time just to let my brain wander, but not like wander like I'm taking a walk. I need it to kind of something to distract me and let it wander that way.
Yeah.
Those are probably my thoughts on it all. I think I've outgrown the stage of I have to work more, meaning the business requires me to work more. I think I've definitely learned for my particular business activities what moves the needle and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's not all work is equal. Realize, all right, I can do more stuff, but all stuff does not have the same value to the business. So I have to be careful about just doing things. So I'll instead do things that I like, which is the podcast. It's write newsletters. I don't look at these as things to drive the business, but it's work. It falls under the category of work, but it's more like soul work for me. So I'll do
Yeah.
that type of work versus we have a Shopify site. I'll just improve this Shopify site for the next 4 hours and change the wording on the products. And now I change these photos and it's going to make such a difference in sales to do all these little things.
Yeah.
Like that type of stuff, I've definitely learned don't do those things. Because there
Yeah.
is, I think, a handful of things in a business that make it successful. And if you're
Yeah.
spending all sun up to sundown doing those, when they need to be done, I think that can be justified. If you're doing it forever, something's broken with the model. It's really, if you're going to do that, it's what are you doing? And if it is just taking control, maybe that's worth it to you. I could also say, whatever, I'm sweeping my pathways. Like it's a total non-value. You don't like literally with a broom, I'm out there just sweeping the pathways. It makes them look nice. It makes me feel good. Or it makes me feel like I'm doing something. Maybe some people need that stuff to just feel like you said they're in control or to unwind. So there could be a place for these, as
Yeah.
long as it's not taking the place of high value things, as long as it's not, you don't have somebody else in your life who's getting pissed. Like, why are you out there doing that?
Yeah. I know for me, it almost felt like regardless of what I'm doing, if I'm at least quote unquote in the office, then I am like, then we're working and we're trudging on forward. And so it would just be like something, it was just as simple as even if I was there for 30 minutes, go to the farm, walk over to the farm for 30 minutes before I drive over to Crystal Organic in the morning. And it was just like, because if I didn't, then it was like, you missed an opportunity to work. You're not giving everything you have to actually make this business grow and it's going to fail. And so it was one of those things where it literally felt like I needed to give every waking moment I had to the business. And I think now that things are progressing, things are, I'm starting to realize like we can weather some storms. There was some resiliency in what we're doing and we're good at it and it's working, that now I can feel more freedom to not have to spend every waking moment physically on the farm. And I think that was the problem too, is I was looking at my workload as physically on the farm. And it was like, if you're not there, hands in the soil or in wash pack or planting something or whatever, you're not working. And so to the point where I could have a full farmer's market day, that morning starts like 5:30 in the morning and I get home, let's say 3, and you're just dog tired from peopling and doing all that sort of stuff. And then you feel guilty because you don't want to go out and weed a couple of beds. And it's, you worked a full day, man. Like just chill. And so I think, and even that kind of would lead back to some level of anxiety because I think that's one of the problems I think with social media and just this whole comparison thing is like you're always going to find someone who does it more, who puts in more hours, puts in more time, and as soon as you hear the story of someone that you idolize or someone that you look up to, of they share a tidbit, an offhand comment of I put in this many hours a week at the farm my first 3 years, and you're like, well, if I'm not doing that, then I'm obviously not as committed to making the business grow. But the reality of it is, it's like you don't know their context, you don't know their financial situation, you don't know anything about their life other than they did that and now they're doing this. And I trying to just realize like I need to do what is best for me now, regardless of if it's the right decision or the best decision, to the point where like I'm now trying to get myself to a point where I am working like I'm trying to shoot for 50 hours a week of like total work time between Crystal Organic and the farm. Yeah. Cause right now I'm doing like 60 and I feel like I could shave 10 hours a week off and still be as productive and be able to devote that into something else. And just realize that it's just because somebody else is doing it, they did 60, 70-hour weeks for the first 5 years of the farm, doesn't mean I have to. And it's not, this isn't their farm. This is my farm. And this is what I need to make sure that I'm healthy and that this thing has legs and it can go for another 10 years so that I can step back and say, when I first started, I did this many hours and now I'm doing this. And it's because in that I have found myself realizing that I neglected a lot of relationships. I neglected a lot of friendships, neglected time with my family, even just neglected time for myself, for my spiritual life, I would find myself like wanting to pray or meditate or read my Bible when it's like, this might be the only thing that's going to bring me down a notch. And it's almost like crisis mode prayer of, Lord, if you're out there, I swear I will turn everything around if you just answer this one prayer, instead of like it becoming this like meditative, soul healing, filling thing that you do on a daily basis. And so trying to dial those things back and no longer believe the lie that it's you have to give every waking moment of your life to this thing until it reaches some predetermined point of success, and then you can choose to dial back and realize I need all of those things in my life now so that this thing can reach some point of success in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to unpack there. My wife started a business and she gets a lot of unsolicited advice around the
Mm,
house. Probably me selling things I wish somebody had told me. So she might be doing some stuff for the business and we'll be, hey, you're really busy lately. We haven't seen you as much. What are you doing? And then I'm constantly asking her, do you have to be doing what you're doing? So there could be A, B, C, D, E. Do you have to do this? And there's been things she's changed. Like I thought, oh, I had to do this every day. If you did it once a week, would anybody notice? Would anything fall off? Would anybody care? I don't know. Okay, try it. And you try it, and yeah, nobody notices. Bam, all this time freedom. And we've hinted at other business consulting things. Another thing I think that could be valuable in the farm space is you get a group, you partner with somebody who's at your farm level. And then you just get somebody who's ran a business before, who's a third party removed. I don't think they have to be a farmer because you're not going to go and ask Salanova questions and stuff like that. It's just here's where we're at, here's where we're doing, and this person is the judge, if you will, and they're going to push back on everything you're doing. What are you doing all day? You're okay. I'm stressed. I feel like I got to work 18 hours a day. All right. Write me out what you're doing for those 18 hours. And they can go through and say, do you have to do this? Do you have to do this? What are the 5 lowest value things on this list? And then they can start crossing stuff out. And there's another farmer there going through the same stuff and they listen to the exercise. And hopefully that's their come to Jesus moment. They're like, oh, I'm doing the same stupid stuff. And there is a lot of that because we can get, when it's just you, it's like you think you're making all the best decisions. And as we talked about, it can often be how we're wired. That's how we're making decisions. It could also be just how stressed you are. But having a
mm,
third party involved who can just objectively, not afraid to tell you're out of line, you're doing something dumb, somebody who you respect who can just evaluate things and be like, hey, you're doing a good job. Keep it up. Focus on these things and go forward. What are you worried about here? Because that's the other thing. Many of us get worried about metrics and numbers that we shouldn't even
yeah.
be worried about. We think, oh, it's financial doom.
Yeah.
And then I say, oh, show me in math financial doom. Oh, we could make it 8 more months if we didn't take in any more income. Okay, that's doom. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted 12 months, right? Or something like that. So then try and build that up over time. But we all worry about things in our own head that maybe aren't rational. So you have third party business, big brother, business buddy who's going to
Yeah. That's
come
what I was
in.
thinking. Big brother, big sister for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, because you can't do you can do it alone, obviously, because everybody does.
Yeah.
But how much stress, I don't want to say it could be saved, just could be righted. Take expectations and maybe put
Yeah.
them on parallel to where they should be. It could take worries and calm them down a little. It could take morale and it could boost that up and just take all your goo that's leaking out everywhere and patch up and be like, I don't know, who's the guy in Rocky, the corner man? Talk like this.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Gus?
I can't remember.
I don't
I know
know.
who you're talking
Burgess
about.
Meredith played him.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody needs like that corner man who's
Hmm.
saying, "Ah, you're fine. Go out there. You got this."
Yeah.
Because I wish I
Yeah.
had had that. I wish I had. This could have avoided a lot of stuff. And people are hesitant to pay for things,
Hmm.
whether that's a consultant to start their farm or a psychologist when they're mentally having struggles. But at what point does money or the mental load or the mistake load from bad mental decisions outweigh the cost of some sort of professional to get help, whether you're feeling depressed and that leads to bad things, or you're doing substances and they're getting worse. And people get divorced. It's sad. I've done the podcast now 11 years, and there's several people, I won't name them, that I can point to that when I interviewed them, they were married and they are not now. And their business related to this space was one of the reasons for relationship breaking up. So that's one of the things at stake here. So it's been a whole wealth of emotions today. I think we hit on almost everything on your list. I think the ADHD could be its whole own episode, but is there anything that we haven't covered, questions you have, things that you think are relevant related to all this?
I'd like to just touch on some of the more practical things that I've done, to kind of let me step into my like Andrew Huberman mode of giving you protocols. I'm the least like protocol person on the face of the planet. Just the idea of having to do something every day, I'm not going to do it just because it's like, if you have to do it every day, then I don't want to do it. I only like to do things where I feel like it. But I will say that the various things that I've implemented have made a world of difference. And one, obviously, was the caffeine thing. Obviously, I had a whole other life in coffee. So most of it's not even the caffeine. I just love drinking coffee. And it's so hard to find good decaf. Otherwise, I would just be slamming decaf all day long. But it's like the first cup and a half is caffeine, and then everything after that is just, God, I love coffee. It's so good. But that really made a huge impact, a much bigger impact than I would have realized it did. And I would say second of all was started supplementing with a lion's mane mushroom extract, doing a tincture of that every morning. Started off by using some other brand. Actually, there's a mushroom farmer that goes to the farmer's market, and I started buying his tinctures and taking it. And then now started just buying his mushrooms and making my own. And then was able to forage for some lion's mane on the property. And there was already vodka in the house, so it was easy to start making our own tinctures. But that has been a huge cognitive boost, helping just keep me focused, keep me more, I don't know how to describe it other than just like keeping my mind, focused. Like I don't feel like I can just have these like big dips of like dopamine crashes and whatever. I just feel pretty streamlined. Exercising again. And I think I was actually listening to an episode of the new daily podcast that Jesse does at No Till Growers. And they were talking about the importance of exercise. And as a farmer who like works their ass off all day long, it's really hard to feel like, oh yeah, like you know what I need to do is I need to work out more. But the reality of it is like getting up, doing like a physical exercise routine, lifting weights, push-ups, pull-ups, that sort of stuff. It just really just sets the day in a really good way and makes me feel a lot more intentional. And another thing that I'm trying, we'll see if it has any sort of effect, but I've read some literature about supplementing with creatine can apparently have some really amazing cognitive effects. I guess from the studies that I've glanced over, I'm not going to say I've camped out on PubMed, but from the stuff I read, depending on the dosage that you take, one, it really helps fill your muscles out. It helps you build muscles, which is really important for longevity, but also it can really give you some cognitive boosts. And so I've been doing that as a all around. It's super cheap, doesn't really taste like anything, just regular creatine monohydrate. And then, trying to get off the damn phone as a millennial who can very easily, and you can say, oh, I'm on Instagram because I'm looking at other farms or I'm posting for the business or this or that, whatever. But it's both from a comparison standpoint, from just like a overstimulation standpoint, from a not spending time with your family standpoint. Like it's just weaning myself off of being any sort of extra, just frivolous time other than maybe like at night. But even then, you don't need the blue light at night. And then also, I would say, last but not least, is trying to make intentional time for my internal world, prayer, meditation, and then also like spending time with people and keeping that as like a central conversation. I'm going to leave here and go have a bonfire with a buddy and hopefully have some really like high-minded conversations about our spiritual life and just really more soul feeding conversations as opposed to just like stressing out about life. And I'd say that that has been a real big grounding point when it does feel like everything's shaking and you can like just stop and pray and breathe and just meditate and remind yourself who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, what's the point of all of this. It really brings you back to center. And so those have been some of the really practical key things that I've, most of them are not new. I've just readopted them, tried to make them an intentional part of my everyday life to keep, to take those wild curves and bring down the amplitude and smooth things out.
Yeah, nothing too crazy there, which
No.
is, I say that in a good way, because if you try and do it all, try and do too much, it's usually hard to follow. So find stuff that works for you, whatever that is, for anybody listening to this. And it's a case where I think consistency beats volume. If you can find one thing to make a positive change and do that consistently, that's more important than everybody loves to pick on Andrew Huberman doing all 9 million things that people have said on his show that you can do. And people try and do all that stuff and they end up totally confused and burnout and broke from trying
Yeah,
to do it all. So yeah, find one thing, do that. And then hopefully that builds some more momentum to do something else. And then you improve something else. And before you know it, you're out of the hole that you were once in. That's just how we have to go about life because it is that sine curve. You want to always ride the up, but you will be down. Dig yourself out of the downs and look forward to it turning up. But yeah, thanks for sharing everything on this
absolutely.
episode and get into it. Hope this is valuable to a lot of people, but thanks again.